And let's spell it out a little more. You look at, for example, in Kuntrus and Mayon, page 45 in the introduction. There, the Frierdiker Rebbe cites the letters, the manuscript and the writings of the Rebbe Rashab. In Tofrei Samach Gimel, Tofrei Samach, he came out with a letter attacking so-called secular Zionism. And then he was met by one of the people who came to defend it, and the Rebbe Rashab defended his own position, why he's opposed to it, and then put it in writing. And it's quite harsh, quite strong. There are 3 tainas there, and the Rebbe Rashab answers each one of them. You can look it up yourself. I'm not going to go through the details. But clearly, for the different reasons, opposed it for the simple reason that the goal of the secular Zionism was to take Yiddishkeit away from Torah mitzvahs, to turn it into something nationalistic, something cultural, something that you could be a complete Jew without Torah mitzvahs, chas v'shalom. And that's what he was negating. And he felt it was undermining, as did other Gedalim and other Jewish leaders, that it would undermine the whole idea of Torah mitzvahs, which itself was very, very fragile times in general. And you can read there more the details. Frierdiker Rebbe, though we don't have as much in writing as that, but we also have his position, as was the position of others that opposed the secular Zionism. Now I should add that the Rebbe Rashab himself initially, before that opposition, was part of the founding of Agudas Yisrael, which was a religious brand that would the religious Zionists, so to speak. But then he changed his position because he saw that it would be hijacked. He would not have any say really or control over it. And of course, the issues continue to rage on today because you have people who are virulent anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, and you don't see the Rebbe have that type of position. You don't see him. You see him receiving Zionist leaders, whether it's heads of state or the President Shazar, different government officials. You see the Rebbe supporting, meaning his chassidim paying taxes and supporting, even going to the army. You don't see that type of opposition that somehow that wouldn't even benefit from anything from the Zionist government. So it seems, as the questioner asked, that there is a change in position. So how do we explain that? So a few points I'd like to make. Number one, we have to understand what was the opposition really of the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab's opposition is, and I would say the Rebbe's opposition is exactly the same, is to the principles and the values of these individuals that were leading that movement. And nothing to do with Torah. You're talking about secular people who felt, for whatever reasons, political reasons, and it could have even been good intentions, but they were secular people who had no respect for Yiddishkeit or Torah mitzvahs. They were part of a movement that we don't need, that we've outgrown that. And the state and its culture, and just another country, just like there's a country in Germany for Germans, and France for French, and England for England, Israel for Jews. And one of the proofs is because they actually didn't even want Israel in the beginning. Uganda was an option, and I think Cyprus was an option. They were talked about Cyprus, different options, until they realized that the Jews won't go for that. To go even further, and I don't like to speak negative, but if you read the original secular Zionist, and I don't even like the word Zionist because Zionist, that Zion, Eretz Zion, is we speak about Zionism. True Zionism is Torah Zionism. I'm talking about Zionism in the language of the cultural language of Zionism without Yiddishkeit, without Judaism, without Torah, without halacha. Originally, they felt that the solution to the Jewish problem, which was assimilation, anti-Semitism, they felt was mass baptism. It only later became the search of a national state, of a homeland. So you see that these were people who either didn't have any knowledge of what Judaism is all about, or may have had knowledge and had very malicious intentions, because they were like the maskilim, some that felt that the Judaism now has to be replaced with a nation, with a country, and with the culture and the politics of a country. And that's what defines Judaism. Just like there were different isms that tried to replace what we call Torah mitzvahs. So these people had intentions that, what do you think, a Jewish leader, if you're a Jewish leader, and your whole mission is to advocate and uphold and strengthen and bolster commitment to Torah mitzvahs, of course this goes against exactly all of Yiddishkeit. And you even feel it's a threat to Jews because Jews survived not on any ism, not on Yiddishism, not on culture, not on theater, not on nationalism, All these things never kept the Jews together. What kept the Jews together? It was the commitment to Torah and mitzvah. So wherever they went in the world, that's what kept them together. So of course you're going to go to battle, ideological battle against an ideology that you see not only as corrupt but destructive. Who would not go against that? The only reason that some religious people went along because they thought, as some of the arguments that were presented to the Rebbe Rashab, that's true, a lot of it is something we can't accept, but the homeland part maybe we can embrace. And let's begin with that, and then we'll spread Yiddishkeit afterwards. But at the time, before there was a homeland, before there was the actual reality, it was an ideological disagreement, which makes total sense under the circumstances. And there's no question that the Rebbe been then, he would have been the Rebbe Rashab and would have opposed it for the same reasons. And not only that, till this day, the Rebbe, and if you look at the Sikhs, opposes an ideology that compromises Torah and mitzvahs. So what changed? Nothing changed from the perspective of the ideology. What changed was the realities on the ground changed. Realities on the ground, whether we like it or not, or whatever the reasons that God in his mysterious ways, that 1948, yes, the partition, the UN partition, and maybe the Balfour Declaration before, created a reality on the ground that gave Jews a right to establish a state. How do we look at this state? Does it have any Torah value? Is it the state that Mashiach is establishing? Absolutely not. But to say that now you have a place and there's a kibbutz of Eden, a group of Eden, 1 million, 2 million, or then hundreds of thousands, doesn't matter the number. And today, can Yirbu over 6 million? More than any other place in the world, to just ignore that and say, oh, I'm ideologically opposed to the concept of a secular state. There are Jews involved. And there's pikuach nefesh involved, life and death. And Jews need electricity, and they need protection, and they need police, and they need utilities. So the facts on the ground, they're no different than the Crown Heights Community Council, or a French Community Council, or a Russian Community Council. A community council is necessary. Does it have Torah value? It has Torah value as much as any council has. But the Torah value of what, in the words of the Rebbe Rashab, regarding a different issue, Nish mitun zeratzen sei megangen in Golos. Not with our will did we go into Golos. Nish mitun zeratzen vel me'areis von Golos. Will we leave Golos? Only the Eibishter decides that. No Jew can decide that. So the idea of an aschalta de gul, that this is the beginning of Reishis Smichas Gulasenu, as the Rebbe puts it, Chaz v'Shalom, Rachmana litzlan, that not. The fact that the divine providence led Jews there and allows Jews to live there and it's thrived, obviously we recognize that. And we recognize also the miracles, whether it was in 1948 or the miracles in the later wars, especially in the 6-Day War, because the miracle of God is God's choice. God creates a situation in a defensive war and allows the Jews to win so much land and Yerushalayim and so on. That's a hand of God. We know this even, Rachmana litzlan, even if an anti-Semite, and I'm not want to compare, is a doctor and he saves your life, you make a brichas hanisim. You thank God for the miracle. God chose this messenger. So to say that Jews, even if they're secular, and even if they have bad intentions, or whatever it is, I'm not saying they had bad intentions in 1967. It's not relevant to the point that God wants to make a miracle. Of course God can do miracles. God can do miracles in Golos, just like can bring the Geula. That's God's choice. That we have to have a strong army and do whatever possible. Absolutely. It's a sacred duty of a human being to protect other people. But that doesn't give it a Teredik memshala. It's not a memshala like Malchus Beis David, King David or King Solomon, or the other leaders that God himself sanctioned. And this doesn't matter who the prime minister, even if the prime minister was a religious Jew, and even if the parliament and Knesset was religious, that doesn't change this. Because only God decides when the Geula is going to come, and when he establishes Malchus Beis David, a Mashiach, and a leadership that will be a Teredik one. But to say that we go to war against, God forbid, people who are protecting other Jews and creating an order and organized system, absolutely not. So the change was the facts on the ground, and that's what the Rebbe responded to. Additionally, just as it was with other matters, even though initially there was a very deliberate war, you can say ideological war against Torah and mitzvahs by many secular Zionists, not all, by some. Today you could say Tanekah and Israel don't even know anymore. They're completely ignorant. So now, once they exist and they are there on the ground, why not use the opportunity to try to speak to them about Torah and mitzvahs? You think that Rebbe Rashab, if someone asked him, can I go speak to Theodor Herzl, or to Nada, or the others that he quotes and cites, and on a private level, to speak to them about bringing them to either put on film with them or something like that, of course you'd say yes. But that doesn't mean you embrace their ideology, even if there's some redeeming factor in it. So the idea that we have now the opportunity to actually introduce people to Yiddishkeit, of course, why the Jews in Israel, including the leadership, including in the government, even the secular, and even the people who are anti, why shouldn't we use the opportunity to bring them as close to Yiddishkeit as possible? And do what we can. Now the opportunity is there. And learn Torah there, and study Torah, and build mazes of Torah.